There we go. All right, so we're talking about the little number. I know. I make all kinds of weird sounds. Well, that's what you say. So a little number. So what does the little number do if it's power? Sir?
It multiplies it that many times by itself.
It multiplies it that number of times by itself. Can you clarify that a little bit better? You're in the right lane.
Well, it takes basically the bigger number times itself for
takes the bigger number and tells it how many times to multiply. Too close. Itself. I love it. I really love it. Sounds like me talking. All right. So all that basically is right. The power basically is the little number that tells the other number, which just happens to be the bigger number, how many times it can multiply by itself. Okay. So that's what's called layman's terms. Specifically, the exponent is the little number. That's what the exponent is. So power and exponent basically mean the same thing. It just depends on who's going to tell you about what it does next or first. But the exponent basically is the little number. That does exactly what Jacob just described. It tells the bigger number how many times it's going to multiply by itself. All right, so which one's the bigger number?
the base.
The base. Very good. So the base is the big number. Now, I'm going to add something to this. Why? Because I feel like it's good for you to have a kind of precursor for what's to come. So not only am I going to say it's the big number, I write shorthand too occasionally for you guys. It's also the expression. Because at some point in time, a little bit before I'm done with you this year, you're also going to have a letter mixed with another operation and a number that also will be used for a power with an exponent. So it's not only just a number that you're going to utilize this with, it's also potentially going to be an expression down the road. So I don't want you to always think of the base as being the bigger number. Sometimes it's going to be that x plus 2. Don't worry, we'll talk about what that means later. And what you do with that overall to get the new expression out of that. So this is the big number or expression that multiplies by itself. Number of this is also day 2 of what Mr. Bourne's handwriting looks like. It gets sloppier the faster I write because I feel like I need to go fast. So with all that being said, exponential form is exactly these three things actually mixed together. So, example. 5. Actually, let me redo that. 5 raised to the second power. So, exponential form is the base with the exponent attached to it. So, not always the solution. Just what it would look like if, in this particular case, you're squaring a number. Yes, sir?
So So for exponential form, we just put 5 over 2 and not times the exponent says? Or is that for the...
No, I had to finish that down here.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. Here, let me help you out with that. That help? Okay. Next time I'll zoom in faster. It'll just look smaller up here. So the best example I'm going to give you at this moment in time is just 5 raised to second power, or 5 squared. You've heard this before. This is not new to you. It may be just a different terminology possibly for some people saying those different things. But in that particular sense, we'll talk about square roots here in just a minute, because we also have some calculator stuff we're going to do. So in your book, go to 33. Some of the things I had prepared today, I decided, I can kind of skip over some of that, because I think it's more important for you to get those stuff. But I'll leave these definitions up here for just a minute, in case you need some other extra time to write down. Because I saw some pencils writing down when I said something. Yeah, I get to skip over a bunch of crap that I think is literally that. And yes, I am recording, so I said that out loud. Because lesson 2, lesson 1, it's useless. Doesn't mean a hill of beans to you, and it doesn't get you where you need to be. So I move forward as far as that's concerned. But going forward, so this is stuff you've been doing since 3rd grade. This is not new. So if I have this grid, a lot of you, I kid you not, will immediately start doing this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. There's nothing wrong with doing that, but you also learned in the 3rd grade, in addition, in moving forward into 4th grade, that you can take these two sides and multiply them together to find the area of what's inside the figure. That's one of the reasons why we talked about it a while back. So 5 times 3 gives you 15 squared, okay? Or 15 centimeters squared, okay? Good so far? Yes? Okay? When we talk about 4-sided figures in here, and I'm talking about the area, it's base times height or length times width, depending on which teacher taught you what. They both arrive at the exact same place, so it doesn't matter which terminology that you use. This is the same thing. Some of you need visuals, and I'm a kind of a visual person. If I have a rectangle here and I say, hey, one side is 84, the other side is 50, what is the multiplication that happens here? 84 times 50. Okay, so lesson number 3 as far as your calculator is concerned. What is 84 times 50? Unless you truly wish to do it in your head or stare at me. Open your calculator, sweetheart. What you got? 4,200. Okay, or 4,200. You're going to hear me say it incorrectly a lot. I'd say that all the time. When I see thousands placed mixed with something else, I just say 4,200. It means the same thing because it literally means 4,200s. But it's 4,200. Now, you have had, either in your past or in your future, a teacher, whether it's going to be science or math, that will say, that's only half right. Because you're forgetting that or that, and they will penalize you for it, and they will criticize you for it. I am not that person. I neither criticize you or penalize you for not labeling what your numbers are. Now, later on this fall, I'm going to talk to you about why having that is important to you when you do stuff with it, as opposed to just making all the computation stuff. But I'll remind you, hey, by the way, when you get a little older, specifically in geometry, if you don't label it, you're probably going to run into a teacher that's going to get upset at you and give you mark credit off of you because you don't do everything you're supposed to. But in this class, I'm not going to. I may ask you, hey, is that square centimeters? Is that square feet? Whatever. And I'm going to expect you to at least be able to tell me, but not necessarily always write it down. How are we doing so far? We're good? No food combos yet. All right, Sean's still awake. I like it. Okay. 34, I think, if I move forward. Now, we're talking about things that are squared specifically. A lot of times there's a reason why it's called squared. It comes from a square. That's really not complicated. But this is where we're going to do a little calculator lessons just to see how far you're along. If I've got 4 times 4, what I say is 4 squared, or 3 squared, 5 squared, or whatever it may be. So on your calculator, we're going to do it two different ways. We're going to use the example first, and then I'm going to show you what's called the power way, and I'm going to show you the square way at the same time. Okay? The first one, inside your calculator, we got the white keys. White keys are all number keys. Also includes a decimal and a negative symbol, and that will always get you in trouble a little bit later on. But I want you to start by hitting the number 4. And we're going to do the shortcut way real quick. On the left side, underneath the second blue key and the alpha green key, there is a set of black keys. Second key down is the X squared button. Basically, that means it takes whatever number you just typed in and square it. That's it. So, hit that button, X squared, then hit enter. And you should get 22.
What? 16.
Thank you. Appreciate that. You should get 16. Okay? So you're taking 4 and you're squaring it. All right? So here's the second way I'm going to show you how to do it. I prefer this method, but other people have a difference of opinion, and I value it. I just don't agree with it. So let's do it again. 4. This time, I want you to hit the caret key, which is just over here underneath the clear button. It's also known as the power key. So when we click that, your cursor is going to go up, and I want you to type 2. And then hit enter. 22, yes? 16. Okay? So two different ways to actually square a number. I prefer this method over here. Why do you think that?
Because you put your own number.
You can change it.
Because you can change the exponent. And you will be changing the exponent a few times this particular year. So I like to make sure that you know how to do that, so it's not so, I don't know, why am I only using that? I can't do it anymore. So we'll do that. Okay, so inside the calculator, let's fill out our table. What is, without just shouting out because you know it already, what is 6 squared? On your calculator, what you got? 36. 8 squared. 64. 11 squared. 121. And 4.2 squared. 17.64. All right, so that part's easy. Whole numbers and decimals make this thing a lot simpler. The last one's a fraction. So, lesson number 2, as far as a fraction is concerned. You already know?
You just convert it to
10.5.
You are correct. You can do a decimal. Now, here's my 2 things I'm going to say about that. 1, not everybody knows what the decimal equivalent is to a fraction. Okay? I'm not saying people don't know a half, but still, not everybody knows that. 2, you may have an answer choice that may not necessarily be in decimal form. So you got to make sure you know how to make sure it is in fraction form. This part is complicated. So I apologize up front, but I want you to listen as carefully as you possibly can. I'm going to go to a different screen, but don't panic. So, wrong side. So, we're going to start with how to make a fraction. On the left-hand side of your calculator, there is a green button. It says alpha on it. Class participation is always important. Make sure, that way I don't have to explain myself later, which I'm going to anyway, but regardless. So alpha, push it. Above that, there is a gray key. Y equals on the far left-hand side. Whether it's in white or not is kind of irrelevant, but I just want you to hit alpha, Y equals. You're going to hear me say that a lot. You're going to see a menu option in front of you. So when you do alpha, Y equals, so green, then gray, you'll see something on the left. The very top option says N/D. That just means numerator over denominator. Underneath that is U N/D. Basically, it means unbalanced or mixed number. Okay? Underneath that, you'll see N/D with an arrow, and then the unbalanced thing, U with an N/D. What that means is, hey, I've got this form of a fraction, I want this form of a fraction. Either way, it goes both ways. The last one says frac/D, or DEC, D-E-C. So fraction to a decimal or vice versa, depending on which way you go. we're gonna mess with how to make a mixed number real quick, and that is option 2. So option 2, and once you push it, you should get something that looks like this. Like that. So on your home screen, you're going to have 3 boxes with a slash on the other 2. So this is for your base, or your big number, and this will be for your fraction. So all I want you to do, and some people get this faster than others, don't panic, type in 10. But then you need to use your arrow keys. They're over here for directions. You're going to go right arrow key, type in 1, down arrow key, type in 2. Sounds kind of silly, but you'd be surprised how many people get mixed up with that. To get out of your fraction, because that's what we want to do. We typed your fraction, now we got to get out of it and be able to do something with it. Right arrow key. That way the cursor leaves what you just made. Now it's going to say, what do you want to do with this? Now you can add with it, you can subtract with it, you can multiply with it, you can divide with it, whatever. Okay? But because we're messing around with something, I want to use your power key, and I want to use 2. So here's what we've done so far. If you've done it correctly, you've told the calculator, I want to make 10.5. I did that. I want to raise it to the second power. Once you hit enter, you should get 441 over 4.
Yep.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay. So you wound up with an improper fraction. Now, there will come a time in my class where I will say, leave it. Don't turn it into something else. It's more important to me that you know it's improper than anything else, because it has a specific meaning about what it's telling you to do. But today, I want to make sure I turn it back to a mixed number. So where do you think I should go? Close. You want to go to alpha y equals. So go back to alpha y equals. What happened, Drew?
This is error sign tax. One quit.
Sign syntax. So you must have typed something incorrectly. I'll be right with you in a second. Okay, so once I'm in alpha y equals, which option am I going to choose? 3, because I want to make sure I go from one kind of fraction to another kind of fraction. So choose option 3, and here's what pops up on the screen. Again, this smart tiny brain is going to say, I have A and S, and the fraction thing you just picked. And it's blinking at you. All it's really asking is this what you want to do? Because, again, it only does what your fingers tell it to do. And you say yes by hitting enter, and you'll get a mixed number. 110 with 110 and 1 1/4, or 1 1/4. Now, going back to something Jacob said, you could convert it to a decimal. You're right. We've got no problem with that. And you would get exactly what you just wound up with. But if the answer was in a fraction form, and you're not familiar with what the fraction looks like based on decimal, that's where you may get caught. So, it's the only thing to think about. And Drew, we're going to do it one more time together on a different one, and see if we can do it again. So, Javon, give me a fraction. One more time. 5 over 7. Okay, so I'm going to take 5 over 7, and I'm going to add a whole number of 3, and I want to square that. Alpha y equals option 2. Type in the 3, arrow over, type in the 5 over 7. Now, before you just hit the square button, make sure you hit the right arrow and get out of the fraction. If you don't, it only squares the top of the fraction. It won't square the entire set. So, something to consider when you move forward. Because I've had that a lot. Why doesn't it do that? Okay, or I've had some people forget to actually square it, and they wind up with 3 times 5 sevenths, which is 15 over 7. Yes? Okay, now right arrow. Not down arrow, right arrow. Right arrow. There you go. Now we're done. But you went ahead and squared the 5. So let's go back. over. We're going to delete that and delete it again to make sure it goes away.
Oh, how'd you delete it?
There's a DEL button.
Oh.
That's okay. Don't worry, we'll have time. Now you're squaring the entire thing. There will be time to talk to you about what delete button means, what clear button means, what all clear means, all that kind of fun stuff. But today I cannot overwhelm you with too much. All right, what'd I get?
676 over 49.
So 676 over 49. How do I get a mixed number? Alpha y equals option 3. And then tell it what to do.
1339 over 49.
Beautiful. So 13, and you said 39
Over 49.
over 49. Okay. Now, that is day 1 of how to make a fraction, how to convert, and how to use an exponent all at one time. Okay? So, yes, I know it is. And I'm not expecting you to get it the first day. By no stretch of my imagination am I expecting you to get it the first day. But I do expect for you to at least try it, make mistakes, and have successes. And hopefully have some memory about what you're going to do the next time we do it. And I promise you, you're not going to remember how to do it the next time we do it. That's why we're going to keep going slower with this over and over and over again. Just have faith and have patience. Okay? Ready? No. What happened?
I accidentally did something.
You actually did something? Like what? You hit clear? Fine.
No, I pressed graph instead of clear.
Oh, okay. So, I guess alternating lessons as far as the calculator, when you get stuck in a menu, you're not really sure how to get out of it. Right. Second and clear, which quits and takes you back to the home screen. Okay? Also, you can do, I'm sorry, not second clear, second mode. Takes you to quit, takes you back to the home screen. Don't worry, lots of people get lost inside the calculator. It happens. So if I want to do 12 squared or 12 times 12, what would I do?
12 times 12.
12x2, beautiful, and hit enter. Or 12, raise the second power using the power button on the right, and that gives you still 144. 1/3 squared. Same process we just walked through, except which option would you use? The first one, because it looks like a regular fraction, n over d. So try that real quick. Alpha, y equals. Choose the first option and use 1 down arrow to get down to the denominator. Hit in 3. Now hit the right arrow to get out of the fraction. Now square it, and you should wind it with 1/9. Yes? Okay. And 3.25 times 3.25 is the same thing you would do with 12. So that part's all the same. Now, exponential form, we talked about that. Expanded form, we're basically stretching it all out. That's what this is, where you do the actual operations. Okay? The standard form basically is the solution for whatever you were asked of. Okay? Same thing if it was 4 plus 3, what's the standard form? 7. Standard form would be 7, or what the solution is. So the expanded form basically is the action that actually takes place with it. The standard form is whatever we come up with. So what's 15 squared?
225.
225. How many of you did 15 times 15? And there's nothing wrong with that. There truly is not. The only reason I'm trying to encourage you to do that is because when we get to something called Pythagorean theorem, you're going to want to be able to use the squares faster, because then we're going to have to go backwards and use what's called a square root. So let's do that real quick. One piece of information that we did not discuss way back when was what a square root symbol is. So let's go back to your vocabulary for just a moment. So I give you the layman's terms, and I give you the real ones. I don't like the term square root, and there's a very specific reason as to why. And as we kind of move along with each other, you'll find out. But this is the check mark. Its real name is radical. I kid you not. It's called a radical because it does weird things. It looks like this. Look familiar? Yeah, it looks like a what? Division. Square root symbols or radical symbols look extremely like a division symbol. And you're going to hear me say this a lot as we kind of progress through the course of the year. It's like division, but it's not. It's basically looking for that one base number that you pulled out and multiplied multiple times. So you'll hear me say it's like division. But it's not. It's close, but not quite. So, if you have that 225 hopefully still on your screen, if you do not, I'm going to ask you to do it a different way. So, I got to find the radical symbol. So on the calculator somewhere, there's a reason why I wrote it in blue. Because it's a blue function. Okay? So, first of all, if you want to get to anything blue on the calculator, what would you do?
Press the blue button.
Press the blue button. You'd be surprised how many people forget that. So if it's anything blue, you hit the second button. If it's anything green, you hit the green button. Okay? It's not just for spelling messages to each other. It actually does have a real function to it. But if I hit the second button, see if you can find the check mark on the calculator.
It's that square root.
It's the square root symbol, but where is it? X2 or X squared button. So if I hit the second button first, followed by the X squared button, you'll get the radical symbol that'll pop up on your calculator. Now, just to prove that it works, 225 is what I'd like you to type in and hit enter. 15.
Yeah.
So the square root of this number means I'm taking away one of the bases that was being multiplied by itself one time. And that gets to be the central base or the core of what we're wanting for. And that's where we're going. When we get to Pythagorean theorem specifically, or a lot to do with right triangles and right angles, this comes into play a lot. But we got a few months before we get there, but it's important for me to make sure you know where the square root symbol is. How are we doing?
Good.
I get a lot of goods and a lot of quiets.
I don't understand that one.
You did not understand that one.
Like, how do you get the answer?
How do you get the answer?
Like, answer. Like, if you're like just doing it without a calculator.
Yeah.
Okay.
What number?
All right.
There.
Fair question. So, how, Mr. Bourne, would you do it without the calculator? Whew. All right. So, 225. Okay. Now, I am looking for something that splits 225 in half. Somehow, some way. Okay? I'm looking for a multiplier that I can pull out of here. Now, bear with me because this takes a little bit of time. Okay? It's just like factoring. You've done that once, probably in 6th grade, a couple of times in 7th, but really didn't mess around with it. Okay, so if I want to factor something out, I got 225. Well, what's one multiplication table that has a 5 in it almost all the time? 5. Okay, so the best thing I would say is, okay, I'm going to pull a 5 out of here. If I pull a 5 out of here, what's left?
2.
Just 2? Just 10? Well, this is division though. That's why I say it's like division, but it's not. Okay? So 5 goes into 22 how many times? 4 times. Okay? That gives me 20. Leaves me with 25. How are we doing so far? We're good? Okay? So, I got my 5 up here. 5 times 5, 25. Blank, 0, done. So 5 is one of them. But what's left? 45. Okay? So I've already pulled my 5 out. Yes? Okay? But I still have to make sure that I can figure out what's left inside the 45. Okay? So I already know that 5's in there somewhere at least once. So I still have something that's left with a 5 on the back end. All right, so I'm going to divide it again by 5. Which means technically I could have divided by 25. But we'll get back to that in just a minute. Okay, so 5 goes into 45 how many times? 9. How many 5s do I have so far?
2 5s.
I have 2 5s. Okay? Which means 5 times 5 is 25. I'll explain why I did that here in just a second. Okay? But what do I have left? 9. Okay? So, again, using multiplication, I have to find a way what the factors are with 9. And if I'm wanting to find what's one factor that doubles itself. Okay? So what is one factor that doubles itself? 3. 3 times 3 is 9. Here's my 3. Now, I have 2 5s already, which means if I want to get down to the base of it, that means that's 5 squared, 25 times 3.
75.
Okay, so with 5 times 5, I can eliminate 1. This is just the rules that kind of go along with this. Eliminate 1. All I'm left with is 5 times 3, which is 15. Square root of 400, square root of 225 is 15.
That's a lot of work.
That's a lot of work.
And that's why we have the calculators.
Well, but you'll hear me say this on more than one occasion. I had to learn how to do that. Learning the square roots is complicated. It takes a long time to work it out. It's almost like you're guessing and checking to figure out what you can pull. But yes, this is a whole lot faster. And I will remind you on more than one occasion, I didn't get a calculator, my graphing calculator in my hand until I went to college. So a lot of this stuff I had to do by hand, which means I'll do it for you. Just have to really remember how I did it. It's been a while. But aside from that, it's easier to do on the calculator. That's why I try to show you. All right. And if you happen to have a smart device in your hand, you can turn it sideways after you open the calculator. It'll have a square root symbol on it. So you don't have to worry about that. All right. So let's practice a little bit. I've got all my squares. So if I give you this 36 feet squared, which means that's the inside of my square. I mean, something times something gives me 36. Now, some of you know it's 6 off the top of your head, and that's fantastic. Others of you may take a little bit to think about that. So, the first thing I want you to do to practice is take the square root symbol. So, second and x squared. Second and x squared. Second and x squared. Now type in 36. And hit enter. You should get 7.
Wait, what?
I got
6.
I messed up.
Wait, what?
Second
Oh.
and x squared.
I press second.
Ah, that's important. That's a step you may miss. So second and the x squared button, and then that takes you to the square root symbol, which gives you the rest of it. Now,
I got it.
real quick, before I run out of time, hit the math button. Math. Math is black. It is right underneath the alpha button. It gives you multiple options of programs to run inside the calculator for computations.
Where's math?
It's right underneath the green key. Math, M-A-T-H. Can you see me, Sean? Just out of your left eye? Okay, good. All right. So, if you look underneath that first menu option, at the very top it'll say num. Basically, that means everything you can do with numbers. If our memory serves, the first one talks about squaring something, or fractions, and then decimals, and then squaring something, and a square root, and after that, there is a cube root, and then underneath that, there is an x root, which means the same thing with the power key. I want to be able to tell you which root I want to find of a specific number. Okay? But that's not something you have to do until late Algebra 1 and into geometry. That's not something you have to do right now. Hit second and mode, quit, get back out of that, go to your home screen. This time I want you to do the same process. I want you to do second and x squared. Only this time I want you to take 121 and hit enter. 11. So we're working backwards. If I give you the in total amount of whatever a square is, to work backwards, which you'll hear me say when we get to a certain portion of the year, to work backwards, you use that x squared or that square root key. If I want to go the other direction, like if I use 8, I know some of you want to do 8 times 8, but I want you to get used to and try to use the x squared button so you know what comes next. How you feeling?
Awesome.
Confused. I like it.
Chicken
Okay.
strips and one.
If my arrow at least tends or has a trending going up, I'm at least comfortable. If you're completely kaput, well, then I've lost you totally. That's why I repeat myself a lot. That's why we go slow with this. It's not to make you roll your eyes at me or get ticked off and say this is boring and too easy. It's just to make sure that I get all of you on the same boat and we're going in the right direction. Because remember, there's 24 of you in here and only one of me. And I may have to start asking somebody to help Drew if he winds up with syntax and ghost words. That reminds me, if on here you ever get an error message and you have two options, one says got to or go to or quit, hit the one that says go to. It'll take you to what it thinks your problem was, and you and I or somebody else can help you fix that and go forward. All right? Back it up. Peace out. Love you.